Hi, thank you. I just want to assure everyone that I did fly in from Detroit last night on a very late plane. I'm not Diana Ross. I'm not one of the three Supremes. However, the people you have here today, Ira, Mingxin, and Dawn, are certainly constitute that kind of collection. So that's my way of thanking Dave for inviting all of us today. What I'd like to do is, no, I can't read anything here. What I'd like to do is shift our focus a little bit. We've talked about macro issues of what the Fourth Plenum means, in particular with respect to legal reform, reform of the courts, reform about ideas of law and rule of law. I'd like to focus much more on a substantive law project and something that is intimately tied up with the capital markets, the organization and the regulation of the capital markets, and that is the ongoing project to amend rather wholesale the securities law. So I have up on the first slide a list of what I'm going to cover, necessarily because we have 10 or 12 minutes to speak through. Much of this information that's on the slides is provided to you to peruse at your leisure online, and I will skip quite quickly through much of the information that's on the slides. I do want to offer a disclaimer, though, initially. Today I will talk about the ongoing project that is amending the PRC securities law and indeed the whole regulatory system of the capital markets. I've been very involved with this personally for more than a year, working with two committees inside the NPC, the legislature, the Cai Jingwei and the Fao Gongwei, the finance committee and the legal affairs office. I can't remember what translation we use now. So I know a lot more than I can share with you. I don't want to be overly coy, but I'd like to identify things that I know for certain are issues, but I don't want to identify too much about directions. Okay, first slide. This is just a snapshot as to the state of China's capital markets in 2014, and then July of this year when in the midst of the crash that is now so famous. What I want to indicate to you is the basic fact that there are capital markets. There are domestic capital markets in China. Many of us lived in China in the 80s and the 90s when people said, one day we'll have stock exchanges in China, and we laughed and said, you're drunk, you've had too much beer. We're not there anymore. There are functioning capital markets in the domestic context, but also in the international context. Now, the market crash. What happened this summer? Well, as you can see, after a period of intense rise in the markets, and here I'm just using the Shanghai Composite Index, in 2.5 years, and then in particular in the year before this summer, where you saw the Shanghai Composite Index, for instance, go up more than 150% in 11 months. Suddenly, in July, on July 8th, you had that important index down 32% in 1 month, and then 2 months later, at the end of August, which was just a desperate time in China, I was there helping draft the securities law. I can tell you it was a desperate time. You had 43% down in 2.5 months. Now, I have a couple of slides which you can read them or you can read them online, which detail the so-called market rescue. That's what it's termed in China. What I want you to understand is that the market rescue in China that was visited upon the Chinese capital markets primarily comprised of liquidity enhancements. Now, liquidity enhancements is a very coy term for what happened. Tons of money was introduced into the system. People were made into forced buyers, all to enhance liquidity, enhance the money going into the market so that people would actually buy some securities as this great tumble happened. A very minor note in this program was what we lawyers think of as enforcement-based remedies, which is, they've already been alluded to in the discussions we've had today, CSRC enforcement, but much more provocatively enhanced Public Security Bureau enforcement against proposed criminal actions like the short selling that Dawn, not Dan, I've known Dawn for 30 years, Dawn referred to. Here's what's most important to me about the fall in the market and the market rescue that was visited upon it. If you understand that the Chinese capital markets don't really account for much of the real work of capital allocation inside the economy of the PRC, if you also recognize, as it was said, I think, in this morning's panel, perhaps before I arrived, China's capital allocation system is primarily based upon a bank system and a system of direct grants, sometimes through banks, sometimes directly by government actors. If you look at the third bullet point, this is the argument I want to make, that the rescue itself, regardless of its wisdom, how blunt it was, how untethered it was to legal means or market means, what it indicated was that the PRC party state is now terribly concerned about a tremendous fall in the capital markets, even though those capital markets are, in our terms, in capital allocation terms, relatively insignificant. And so I say in the fourth bullet point that I believe that suddenly the markets matter in China, and they matter now because the PRC party state, in addition to all the other tasks that are, have to be performed by that party state, the party state now has to show that it can competently regulate this thing called capital markets and do it in a way that shows competence, obviously, shows some kind of independence from government involvement in the market itself, shows fairness, shows transparency, shows the battle against corruption, and also serves all those national development needs, and of course, critically, continues the fetishizing of social stability. So, with that as preface, I then will rocket through a couple of slides just to indicate where we have come in the period before this moment of amending the securities law. I have on this slide a number of key developments that indicate what the state of the capital markets is. This should be familiar to everyone here. More importantly, when you look at legal and regulatory developments in the Chinese circumstance, you see regulations, administrative regulations, you see a number of statutes. And I'll pick, this is a little bit of a riff off Min Xin's good comment. He said, and this is a traditional comment about Chinese law, it's very vague, it's very broad, it's subject to discretion at the central level, at the local level. That doesn't work for statute and lawmaking in this particular area. This is an area where lawmaking has to be very, very technically good. Because if it isn't, you can't abide by vague ideas of, you know, you should do this and love and kisses, go forth and raise capital. This is a very sophisticated technical area. The other thing I want you to note here is in the middle, it's the third and the fourth bullet point. The capital markets gave rise to a huge appetite for the private right of action, private lawsuits against bad disclosure into the markets. Now, who were the bad disclosers? Often government-tied directors, officers, underwriters, issuers. This was a key development in the beginning of the 2000s, whereby you saw private litigants saying, hey, you're cheating me. I don't care if you're the local party secretary. You've cheated me out of my money. They fled into the courts. The Supreme People's Court initially said, stop, we can't handle these cases, and then relented, but to really narrow up those ideas of access to the court system. But important for my argument in that it shows how a market has created the appetite, the ambition for private rights of action against specifically government actors, which of course impacts upon notions of independence. Very quickly, here's a list of some of the institutional actors which are involved in this mix. What you don't see, this is Don's the dog that didn't bark, is the courts. You also don't see the other big candidate for regulation in this area, which is the exchanges, or what we call in this system, self-regulatory organizations. That will become important if I can get to my, the central part of my presentation. Okay, so amendment of the securities law is on the table. There are a huge number of issues involved in amending a statute this important, this technically complex. I don't have time in this presentation to describe some of the issues which will perhaps for this audience spring to mind. What I do want to focus on is this central choice between what some people call a U.S. model, let's just call it a U.S. historical model, between a disclosure-based anti-fraud and anti-manipulation system which gives, or which posits a mix of public enforcement, that's the government or the agencies, and private enforcement. You all know that if you follow the U.S. capital markets and you understand the abuse of frivolous lawsuits, 10b-5 lawsuits, class action suits, et cetera. Contrasted against that is what I'm going to call momentarily the PRC model, which is much more, at least for initial issuances of securities, accessing the capital markets, is a system of merit review or basically approval and a strict business regulation model. So those are the choices that China faces. Now, you can see the indications of the status quo ante model that China uses just in looking at, in terms of issuers' conditions for anyone who wants to access money on the capital markets. And I'm just going to flip through these. These are onerous, they're directive, and then you discover that China for years has had effectively a specific approval system for new issuances of securities on the capital markets. So, based with that status quo ante, you then look at some of the political signifiers that a change is coming. And the change is this idea of implementing a quote-unquote registration system. What is that? That's a system whereby you register your securities, or you're a registered issuer, and you base your issuance entirely on disclosure, okay? Not on some kind of government approval or approval by anyone else by a listing committee. Now, inside the closed hothouse room of the difficult work of amending the securities law, there are huge problems with trying to bring this new system to bear in China. I don't have time to talk about them, but I do have time to say that there is, it's unlikely that there will be a securities registration system that looks anything like what we know under the 1933 Securities Act in the United States. Instead, it'll look a lot more like what we have in Hong Kong, which is a registration with the stock exchange and then kind of a window whereby the CSRC or some government agency can provide effectively a negative veto of the issuance. So it's sort of a mix of registration and some kind of approval. Most important for this presentation is that any kind of registration system that is really used in China gives rise once again to the specter, it depends what side of the divide you're on, of private rights of action, private lawsuits against the bad disclosure. There is no way that you can invite everyone to come to the capital markets and base their issuances on disclosure and think that the local, the agency, the national agency, can regulate all of that activity. You must create space for a private right of action. That, of course, in the Chinese context, has very, very significant civil society, social stability implications. There's also a problem with respect to a separate case, which is insider trading. Insider trading regulation in China is predicated on a dysfunctional US model. It's a perfect example whereby everyone in China knows exactly what China needs, which is a UK-EU model. At this point, and it's my last bullet here, and this gets into our central discussion, my experience is that there's no one in China right now who thinks otherwise, who thinks that the US model is functional. At the same time, no one can make these purely technical changes because of what? The market fall, but also the anti-corruption campaign. No one is standing up to make objectively desired technical changes because of the political environment. My conclusions, you can read them online. What I'm trying to say to you is that this area of highly technical regulation has very, very concrete civil society implications and gets all mixed up China's quest for modernity, a functional administration, an independent legal system, and a technically competent legal system which will redound to the ideas of legitimacy, et cetera, for the party state. Thank you very much.